Welcome. Today we're diving into a topic that affects all of us, attachment and how it shapes our adult relationships. Now, when most people hear about attachment theory, they think it only applies to childhood development, but that's not the case. In reality, our attachment style impacts the way that we relate to others as adults. It influences how comfortable we feel with closeness, how we handle conflict, and how we manage our emotional needs. One of the most important things we'll talk about today is recognizing your own attachment style. This self awareness is key because our attachment style isn't just something that we're stuck with. It's a learned pattern based on our early experiences. And just like any other pattern, it can change and grow as we become more aware of it and put in effort to make adjustments. Before we dive deeper, it's important to understand key figures behind attachment theory. The foundation of this work was laid by John Bowlby in the 1950s, and he introduced attachment theory by studying the bond between infants and their caregivers, suggesting that these early relationships shape our sense of security and trust throughout life. Mary Ainsworth followed up with the 1970s with her famous strange situation study, where she observed how toddlers reacted to brief separations from their mothers. Ainsworth research led to the identification of attachment styles secure, avoidant, and anxious. Later on, Main and Solomon added the disorganized attachment style to this framework, recognizing how trauma and inconsistent caregiving could result in more chaotic relational patterns. If we think about it in terms of a timeline, in the 1950s, John Bowlby introduces attachment theory focused on the deep bond between infants and caregivers. The 1970s, Mary Ainsworth's strange situation experiment leads to the concept of attachment styles, which are those specific patterns that describe how people relate to others. And in the 80s, Main and Solomon add disorganized attachment to the framework, showing how trauma impacts relationships. So while attachment theory explains the broad significance of emotional bonds, attachment styles gives us a more detailed look at how individuals react to these bonds based on early experiences. Today, we'll explore how this plays out in adult relationships, specifically in the context of recovery and counseling. Understanding these styles is a powerful tool for personal growth and for supporting others in their journeys to healthier connections. So let's get started. Attachment styles offer a framework to understand how we approach relationships shaped by early interactions with caregivers. These styles, secure, avoidant, anxious, and disorganized, reflect patterns of trust, closeness, and emotional regulation. Each style carries unique behaviors and relational tendencies that impact how we connect with others in adulthood. While John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth laid the foundation for understanding these patterns in childhood, their significance extends far beyond. Attachment styles influence adult relationships from managing intimacy and trust to navigating conflict. David Wallen's work connects these early patterns to adult emotional experiences, providing insights into how attachment affects personal growth and healing. By exploring these styles, we can uncover ways to foster healthier connections both in therapy and everyday life. So, starting with secure attachment. Secure attachment is often seen as the ideal attachment style as it represents a healthy balance of independence and interdependence. People with secure attachment generally feel comfortable with emotional intimacy and trust others without fear of being overwhelmed or abandoned. They can form and maintain deep, meaningful relationships while also maintaining a sense of personal autonomy. Securely attached individuals tend to have grown up in environments where their emotional needs were consistently met. As children, they experienced caregivers who are responsive, emotionally available, and consistent, allowing them to develop a sense of trust in others. Because of this foundation, securely attached individuals feel confident that they can rely on others when needed, but they also trust their ability to handle situations on their own. One of the hallmarks of secure attachment is the ability to regulate emotions effectively. When faced with stress, securely attached individuals don't feel overwhelmed by their emotional reactions. They can experience and process their emotions without feeling consumed by them, which allows them to navigate challenges with resilience. Secure attachment allows individuals to feel comfortable depending on others without losing sense of self. They don't see emotional closeness or reliance on others as a threat to their independence. At the same time, they can provide support to others without feeling burdened or overwhelmed by their partner's or friend's emotional needs. Securely attached individuals tend to approach relationships with a sense of confidence and security. They believe that their relationships are stable and trustworthy, which allows them to focus on the positive aspects of connection rather than constantly worrying about potential rejection or abandonment. One of the most fundamental aspects of secure attachment is trust, both in themselves and in others. Securely attached people trust their partners, friends, or loved ones, and trust that they'll be there when they're needed, and this trust is reciprocated. They don't feel the need to micromanage relationships or constantly seek reassurance because they are confident in the strength of their connections. Securely attached individuals can be emotionally vulnerable without fear of rejection. They are comfortable sharing their feelings, needs, and concerns, knowing they won't be judged or abandoned. This comfort with vulnerability fosters open communication, which is key to maintaining healthy relationships. In times of conflict or stress, securely attached people tend to handle disagreements constructively. They don't shy away from conflict, but approach it with the belief that it can be resolved through open communication. They are less likely to become defensive or withdraw emotionally because they trust that the relationship can withstand disagreements. Secure attachment manifests in relationships through open communication, emotional availability, and a healthy balance between giving and receiving support. So here are some common behaviors you might observe in somebody with secure attachment style. Starting with healthy communication. People with secure attachment feel comfortable expressing their emotions and needs directly. For example, if they feel upset about something in their relationship, they can approach their partner calmly and discuss their feelings without fear of rejection or escalating conflict. They might say, I'm feeling hurt about what happened earlier and I'd like to talk about it, instead of withdrawing or becoming defensive. Securely attached individuals don't feel threatened by emotional intimacy. They enjoy being close to their partners or friends without feeling that their independence is at risk. This comfort with closeness allows for deep emotional connections and fosters trust and safety in the relationship. Secure attachment allows people to provide emotional support to others without feeling drained or burdened. They can be there for their partner or friends during tough times while maintaining their own emotional well being. For example, they might comfort their partner after a difficult day at work, but also take some time for self care, recognizing that they don't need to sacrifice their own needs to help others. People with secure attachment understand the importance of healthy boundaries. They are able to say no when necessary and can assert their needs without feeling guilty or fearing the relationship will suffer. For instance, they might tell their partner, I need some time alone to recharge, and feel confident that this boundary won't harm the relationship. Secure attachment enables people to handle periods of physical or emotional distance without feeling anxious. They trust that the relationship is stable and can withstand temporary separation. For example, a securely attached individual might be fine with their partner going on a weekend trip with friends, trusting that the relationship will remain strong despite the distance. Securely attached individuals have a positive internal dialogue when it comes to relationships. They trust that their emotional needs will be met, and they approach relationships with a sense of optimism and confidence. Their inner thoughts might sound like, I know I can count on my partner if I need them. I trust that we can work through this conflict together. I'm okay on my own, but I also enjoy being close to others. These thoughts reflect the secure base that they've developed both internally and in their relationships. And in recovery, secure attachment plays a critical role in fostering emotional stability and resilience. Securely attached individuals tend to approach recovery with confidence and a balanced sense of dependence on their support system. They can lean on others for help while also trusting their own ability to navigate challenges independently. In recovery settings, someone with secure attachment might actively participate in group therapy, sharing their experiences and offering support to others without feeling overwhelmed. They see the group as a source of connection and healing, but also feel confident in their ability to manage outside of the group. They don't rely solely on group validation to feel grounded, but they appreciate the support that it offers. Securely attached individuals can set healthy boundaries in recovery. For example, they might attend a 12-step meeting for support, but they might also take time to reflect independently on their progress. They understand that both connection and self-reflection are important parts of the recovery process. People with secure attachment tend to handle setbacks with resilience. If they experience a relapse, they are more likely to reach out for help and view the setback as a part of the recovery process rather than a personal failure. They can trust that their support system will help them get back on track without judgment. Even if someone didn't develop secure attachment in childhood, it's possible to cultivate secure attachment over time. Relationships, therapy, and self-awareness can contribute to the development of more secure attachment style. Through therapy, individuals can explore their attachment patterns and learn to build trust, communicate openly, and embrace vulnerability. Therapy often provides a corrective emotional experience where the therapist serves as a secure base. Over time, clients can internalize trust and safety that they experience in therapy, allowing them to develop more secure attachments in their personal relationships. Secure attachment can also be developed through healthy, consistent relationships. When individuals experience emotional safety and trust in a relationship, whether it's a romantic partner, a friend, or family member, they begin to challenge their previous attachment patterns and move towards a more secure way of relating. Practices like mindfulness can help individuals with insecure attachment patterns to develop emotional regulation skills that mimic secure attachment. By learning to tolerate uncertainty and manage emotional responses, individuals can become more secure in their relationships over time. So, moving on to the insecure attachment types, we're going to start with avoidant attachment. And that's also known as dismissive avoidant, and it's characterized by a tendency to devalue closeness and emotional intimacy. People with this attachment style often appear emotionally distant, self reliant, and independent. Their need to maintain control over their emotional world leads them to avoid vulnerability, as they've learned often from early experiences that relying on others can lead to disappointment or hurt. At the core of avoidant attachment is the belief that others are either unwilling or unable to meet their emotional needs. This belief stems from early caregiving experiences where emotional needs may have been dismissed, ignored, or met inconsistently. As a result, avoidantly attached individuals learn to minimize their emotional needs and rely on themselves for security, creating a defensive strategy that protects them from future hurt or rejection. Though avoidantly attached individuals may appear emotionally detached or uninterested in relationships, beneath the surface lies a deep discomfort with vulnerability. They are not indifferent to connection. Rather, they've developed a coping mechanism that prioritizes independence as a way of avoiding emotional pain. One of the key drivers behind avoidant attachment is a fear of becoming dependent on others. To avoid this, individuals may downplay the importance of relationships or convince themselves that they are better off alone. Avoidantly attached individuals tend to suppress or disconnect from their emotions. They may have difficulty identifying or expressing their feelings, leading them to avoid emotional conversations or interactions. This suppression often stems from early experiences where showing emotion was either discouraged or not responded to in a supportive way. As a defense mechanism, people with avoidant attachment emphasize self reliance. They prefer to handle challenges on their own rather than reaching out for help, as asking for support feels risky or weak. This hyper independence is often mistaken for confidence, but in reality, it masks a deep fear of vulnerability. Avoidant attachment manifests in relationships through emotional distancing and an emphasis on independence over closeness. These behaviors, while protective, can make relationships difficult to navigate and maintain. Someone with avoidant attachment may avoid deep emotional conversations or react defensively when asked to open up. They might say things like, I don't like to talk about my feelings, or I'm not the emotional type. This detachment is a way to avoid vulnerability and the discomfort that comes with emotional intimacy. Avoidantly attached individuals may engage in relationships that remain emotionally superficial. They are often more comfortable with casual or transactional relationships where emotional depth is not required. In romantic relationships, this may keep their partners at a distance, avoiding conversations about commitment, emotions, or future plans. People with avoidant attachment may resist asking for help, even in situations where they clearly need support. They might view seeking help as a sign of weakness or as an admission that they're not fully in control. This reluctance can strain relationships as their loved ones may feel shut out or rejected. During stressful or emotionally charged situations, somebody with avoidant attachment may withdraw rather than seek comfort from their partner. They might retreat emotionally, shutting down conversations or leaving the situation entirely. This withdrawal can leave their partners feeling confused, rejected, or hurt. Avoidantly attached individuals may struggle with long-term commitment, feeling uncomfortable with the idea of being emotionally dependent on someone else. They may avoid committing to a relationship or keep a psychological distance, even in serious partnerships. When asking to define the relationship, they may become evasive or downplay the significance of the connection altogether. Internally, somebody with avoidant attachment is often dealing with conflicting thoughts and feelings. While they may crave connection on some level, their fear of vulnerability and emotional dependence keeps them from pursuing it fully. Their inner dialogue might sound something like, I don't need anyone, I can handle this on my own. Or, if I get too close, I'll end up getting hurt. Emotions just complicate things, it's easier to stay detached. And these thoughts reflect the protective mechanisms that they've developed to avoid emotional pain, even if it means sacrificing closeness and connection. Avoidant attachment can present specific challenges. The recovery process often involves connecting with others, being vulnerable, and asking for support, tasks that go against the instinctual defenses of someone with avoidant attachment. So here's how avoidant attachment might show up in a recovery context. Someone with avoidant attachment may prefer individual counseling over group therapy, as group settings might feel too exposing. They may be uncomfortable sharing their emotions in front of others or relying on a group for support. Individual counseling allows them to maintain a sense of control while limiting emotional exposure. In therapy or recovery programs, avoidantly attached individuals might resist opening up about their feelings, even when encouraged to do so. They may focus on practical solutions or intellectualize their recovery process, avoiding emotional discussions. For example, they might say, I don't need to talk about my past, I'm just focused on moving forward. Avoidantly attached people may downplay the importance of support systems in recovery, preferring to rely on themselves. They might avoid leaning on their sponsor, therapist, or group, thinking, I've got this under control or I don't need anybody else's help. In moments of emotional distress, avoidantly attached individuals might withdraw rather than seek help. They may struggle with acknowledging their emotional triggers, preferring to push through or shut down instead of asking for support. This avoidance can lead to isolation, making recovery more difficult. Avoidant attachment, if left unaddressed, can lead to chronic emotional isolation. While the individual may appear highly independent and capable on the surface, their avoidance of emotional intimacy can leave them feeling disconnected and alone. Over time, this isolation can contribute to mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, or substance use, as the individual struggles to cope with unmet emotional needs. Additionally, avoidant attachment can lead to repetitive relationship patterns, where the individual continually cycles through emotionally distant or short-term relationships. They may avoid long-term commitment, fearing that true intimacy will expose their vulnerabilities or lead to disappointment. And this pattern can leave them feeling unfulfilled in their personal relationships, even when they value independence. Avoidant attachment is not a fixed trait. It can change with time, effort, and supportive relationships. Therapy offers a space where avoidantly attached individuals can begin to explore their discomfort with vulnerability in a safe, non-judgmental environment. Over time, they can learn to trust others and allow themselves to be more emotionally available. Therapists working with avoidantly attached clients can help encouraging gradual emotional exploration. It's important not to push too hard, as avoidant clients may shut down if they feel overwhelmed by emotional demands. Instead, therapy can focus on building trust and creating a safe space where the client feels comfortable taking small steps towards vulnerability. So, an example might be a person with avoidant attachment in therapy might initially resist talking about their emotions, but as the therapeutic relationship deepens and trust is established, they may begin to share more. Over time, they can learn to ask for help when needed and start to view emotional intimacy as something positive rather than a threat. And the third attachment style that we're talking about today is anxious attachment, also known as preoccupied attachment, is characterized by an intense desire for closeness and intimacy coupled with a persistent fear that these needs will not be met. People with anxious attachment often feel like they're always on the verge of losing the relationship they value most. Despite their strong desire for connection, they tend to experience relationships as unstable or fragile, believing that love and affection are conditional or fleeting. This insecurity drives them to seek constant reassurance from their partners, friends, or loved ones, often in ways that can feel overwhelming to others. Anxiously attached individuals often develop this style due to inconsistent caregiving in early life. Their caregivers may have alternated between highly attentive and emotionally unavailable, leaving the child unsure of when or how their needs would be met. As a result, they grow up feeling that relationships are unpredictable, and they develop a heightened sensitivity to any perceived signs of rejection or abandonment. For someone with anxious attachment, relationships are often filled with a sense of emotional turbulence. Even small disruptions like a delayed text or a change in tone can trigger feelings of fear, worry, and insecurity. The emotional landscape is one of hypervigilance, where they are constantly scanning for signs that their partner may be pulling away. One of the core fears driving anxious attachment is the belief that they will be abandoned or left behind. This fear may manifest as jealousy, possessiveness, or a need to control the relationship as they attempt to prevent their partner from leaving. To soothe their fears, people with anxious attachment often seek frequent reassurance from their partners or friends. This can come in the form of asking repeatedly if the person loves them, seeking constant validation, or clinging to the relationship for emotional security. However, no matter how much reassurance they receive, it may never feel like enough because the underlying fear remains. Anxiously attached individuals tend to overanalyze their partner's words and actions, looking for hidden meanings or signs of trouble. A simple missed phone call or a perceived change in behavior can spiral into catastrophic thinking where they fear the relationship is falling apart, even if nothing is wrong. Anxiously attached individuals are driven by a need for closeness, but the way they seek it can often strain the relationships they're in. Here are some common behaviors that you might see in someone with anxious attachment. Clinginess or emotional dependency. They might constantly seek proximity to their partners or friends, both physically and emotionally. They may struggle with being apart from their partner and frequently check in to ensure that everything's okay. This can lead to feelings of suffocation for their partner, who may feel overwhelmed by the constant need for reassurance. They might also exhibit jealousy and fear of losing the relationship. Even in secure and healthy relationships, those with anxious attachment may feel threatened by the presence of others, feeling that their partner might find someone else more appealing. This can lead to possessive behaviors or attempts to control the relationship to prevent perceived threats. People with anxious attachment are often hyper aware of subtle shifts in their partner's behavior. If the partner seems slightly distracted or busy, the anxiously attached individual might immediately assume that something is wrong in the relationship, leading to unnecessary conflict or anxiety. They might overreact to small changes, interpreting them as signs of abandonment. Anxiously attached individuals often struggle with respecting personal boundaries in relationships. They may push for more closeness or emotional intimacy rather than their partner is ready for, which can create tension. For example, they may feel rejected if their partner asks for space or time alone, perceiving it as a sign that their partner is pulling away. If they feel their need for closeness is not being met, they might engage in what attachment theorists call protest behaviors. This could include calling or texting repeatedly, starting arguments to get attention, or withdrawing emotionally to test whether their partner will pursue them. These behaviors are attempts to reestablish emotional connection, but often backfire, creating more distance instead of closeness. The internal thoughts of someone with anxious attachment can be deeply distressing. Their internal dialogue often includes beliefs like, do they really love me or are they just pretending? If they don't respond right away, does that mean they're angry or thinking of leaving me? I'm not good enough and they're going to figure it out eventually. These thoughts create a constant cycle of self-doubt and anxiety, making relationships feel like high-stakes games where any wrong move could result in abandonment. For individuals in recovery from addiction, anxious attachment can further complicate the process. In recovery, relationships play a critical role providing support, but those with anxious attachment may struggle to trust their support system will remain stable. Here's how anxious attachment might show up in recovery settings. Someone with anxious attachment may become overly dependent on their sponsor or therapist for validation and reassurance. They might text or call their sponsor frequently, especially in moments of distress, needing constant affirmation that they're doing well in their recovery. Group therapy can be a triggering environment for someone with anxious attachment. They might feel a constant need to be liked or validated by group members, and perceived criticism or disinterest could spiral into feelings of rejection or abandonment. The emotional roller coaster of anxious attachment can be draining, both for the person experiencing it and for their loved ones or support system. The constant need for reassurance and fear of abandonment can lead to burnout in relationships, making it difficult to maintain healthy and balanced connections. It's important to note that while anxious attachment is often rooted in early experiences, it's not a fixed trait. With the right support, whether through therapy, secure relationships, or self-awareness, individuals can shift towards more secure attachment styles over time. Therapy in particular offers a space to explore these fears of abandonment and develop healthier ways to relate to others. In therapy, clients with anxious attachment can practice self-soothing techniques and mindfulness, learning to tolerate the uncertainty of relationships without immediately jumping to worst case scenarios. Over time, they can begin to internalize the security once sought externally, gradually reducing their dependence on constant reassurance. So, an example might be think about somebody in recovery who constantly seeks validation from their sponsor or group members. If they don't get a quick response, they might spiral into anxiety, wondering if they've done something wrong or if people are losing faith in them. This constant need for reassurance also creates tension in relationships. And the fourth attachment style we're talking about today is disorganized attachment, also referred to as fearful avoidant attachment, and it arises when early caregivers serve as both a source of comfort and fear. This contradictory dynamic often stems from trauma such as abuse, neglect, or witnessing violence in the home. Because the caregiver who is supposed to provide safety is also a source of distress or unpredictability, the child is left in a state of confusion about how to approach relationships. People with disorganized attachment experience an internal push-pull dynamic where they simultaneously crave closeness and fear emotional intimacy. Their early experiences teach them that relationships are dangerous or unreliable, yet they still have a deep need for connection. This creates emotional chaos where they might desperately seek connection one moment and then push people away the next. Trauma is a key factor in disorganized attachment. Early trauma disrupts the ability to form consistent, stable attachment patterns. As a result, people with disorganized attachment often have difficulty regulating their emotions, particularly in relationships. They may experience emotional extremes, moving from deep longing to intense fear of being hurt. One of the defining features of disorganized attachment is the paradoxical fear of both abandonment and intimacy. While they fear being left alone, they also fear the vulnerability that comes with being close to someone. This creates an internal conflict where they never feel fully safe, either alone or in relationships. For individuals with disorganized attachment, relationships are often a source of profound emotional distress. They may feel torn between their desire for connection and their fear of being hurt, leading to emotional dysregulation and unpredictable behaviors. The internal experience of disorganized attachment is one of confusion and fear. Individuals often feel emotionally paralyzed, unsure of whether they should approach or avoid the people that they care about. Their emotional responses are shaped by early experiences where caregivers were unpredictable, leading to a sense that relationships are inherently dangerous. People with disorganized attachment are often hypervigilant to signs of rejection or abandonment, which can lead to misinterpretation of neutral or minor interactions as evidence that someone is about to leave them. This hyper-awareness can trigger intense emotional responses, even if no actual rejection is occurring. Because their emotions are so tightly tied to their attachment fears, people with disorganized attachment often experience emotional extremes. They may feel intensely attached to someone one moment, only to feel terrified of the same person the next. This inconsistency makes it difficult for them to maintain stable relationships. Disorganized attachment manifests in erratic and unpredictable behaviors in relationships. The individual's internal fear of closeness and abandonment leads to inconsistent behaviors that can be confusing both for themselves and for their partners. There's an approach avoidance behavior, or that push-pull that I was talking about. People with disorganized attachment may pursue closeness only to withdraw once they feel emotionally vulnerable. For example, they might initiate intimacy with their partner, but then pull away or become emotionally distant if they sense that their partner is getting too close. This cycle of pursuing and avoiding intimacy can create instability in the relationship. There's also fear-based clinging and withdrawal. They may alternate between clinging to relationships out of fear of abandonment and pushing people away to avoid getting hurt. This behavior often leaves their partner feeling confused or rejected as the individual's emotional needs and actions are inconsistent. One moment they might demand reassurance and closeness, and the next they might disappear or shut down emotionally. Disorganized attachment often leads to emotional overwhelm, particularly in situations that trigger past trauma or feelings of vulnerability. When overwhelmed, the individual may withdraw from the relationship either emotionally or physically. They might stop communicating, avoid seeing their partner, or refuse to engage in emotional discussions, feeling that they need to escape the emotional intensity. People with disorganized attachment may engage in behaviors that test their relationship to see if the other person will stay. This could involve provoking arguments, creating drama, or even self-sabotaging the relationship. These tests are often driven by a deep-seated fear that the relationship isn't stable and the person wants to confirm whether or not they will be abandoned. In situations of emotional stress, someone with disorganized attachment might experience dissociation or emotional numbness. This is a defense mechanism that allows them to detach from overwhelming emotions, but it can also lead to further emotional withdrawal from the relationship. Their partner may feel like they've shut down or become unreachable during moments of conflict. Internally, someone with disorganized attachment often feels a sense of internal chaos. Their thoughts reflect the deep conflict between wanting connection and fearing emotional risks involved. Their inner dialogue might sound something like this: I want to be close, but what if they hurt me? I'm scared they're going to leave me, but I'm also scared of what will happen if they get too close. Why do I feel so afraid when things get so serious? These conflicting thoughts lead to emotional dysregulation as the individual struggles to reconcile their needs for intimacy with their fear of getting hurt. Disorganized attachment can create significant challenges in the recovery process. The emotional instability and fear of abandonment associated with this attachment style often interferes with the consistency and support needed for recovery. Here's how disorganized attachment might show up in recovery settings. Someone with disorganized attachment might struggle to maintain consistent engagement in therapy or support groups. One day, they may eagerly participate in therapy, feeling hopeful about their recovery. The next, they might skip a session or withdraw from the group, feeling overwhelmed by the emotional demands of recovery. Group therapy or 12-step programs may trigger feelings of vulnerability and fear for people with disorganized attachment. They may initially feel connected to the group only to pull away once they begin to feel emotionally exposed. Their fear of closeness can make it difficult from trusting supportive relationships within the recovery community. Disorganized attachment makes it difficult for individuals to fully trust their recovery support systems, whether it's a sponsor, a therapist, or a group. They may constantly question the stability of these relationships, fearing that their support network could abandon them at any moment. This distrust can lead to emotional isolation, making recovery more challenging. In recovery, emotional triggers, such as a difficult therapy session or an intense group discussion, can lead to withdrawal. Rather than processing their emotions in a healthy way, someone with disorganized attachment may dissociate, emotionally shut down, or stop attending therapy altogether to avoid the emotional pain. Disorganized attachment can lead to ongoing relational instability and mental health challenges if left unaddressed. The fear of abandonment and intimacy may prevent individuals from forming long-term, stable relationships, and they may cycle through patterns of emotional withdrawal and clinging. Over time, this emotional dysregulation can contribute to issues like depression, anxiety, substance use, and relationship difficulties. Although disorganized attachment is rooted in trauma, it's not a permanent state. With the right support, individuals can begin to heal their attachment wounds and develop healthier ways of relating to others. Therapy is a crucial space where individuals with disorganized attachment can begin to explore their fears of intimacy and abandonment in a safe, non-judgmental environment. In therapy, individuals with disorganized attachment can begin to form a secure therapeutic relationship where they can gradually trust their therapist. Over time, this relationship can serve as a model for other relationships, helping them navigate their fears or emotions more effectively. For individuals with disorganized attachment, trauma-informed therapy is essential. Individuals can work with clients to process their early trauma and develop coping mechanisms for handling emotional intimacy. Techniques like EMDR or eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, or somatic experiencing, can help address the underlying trauma that contributes to disorganized attachment. And recovery is possible when individuals with disorganized attachment experience consistent and stable support. Whether through therapy, peer support, or a trusting relationship, these individuals can learn that not all relationships are dangerous or unstable. With time, they can develop a more secure attachment style. That concludes part 1 of this lecture series about attachment styles. Next week, I'm going to talk more about the overlap between attachment styles and diagnosis seen in the DSM and ways to support different attachment styles through therapy. If you have any questions, drop a comment below. Feel free to like and subscribe to follow up for part 2.